Welcome to this week's episode of the Evolve to Succeed podcast with Rupert Holloway from Conker Distillery. Look, we're in the distillery itself, a great venue to be recording and filming this episode. And we've had Rupert on the podcast before, back in November 21, just over after COVID. And I bumped into him recently and he was telling me about some of the trials and tribulations that have been around the business since. And I just thought it was a great opportunity to catch up with Rupert. Business is also in 2024, 10 years old. So we'll touch on that and so much more during the course of the conversation. I really do hope you enjoy this episode. Do remember to support us by subscribing and reviewing the podcast on your favorite platform. Thank you. Welcome, Rupert, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast once again.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on the podcast. November 21 comes. You're on your last on the podcast.
Yeah.
But looking at your website and knowing a little bit about your history, 2014 is 10 years of Conker. So I thought it would be a good chance to come and just have a catch-up story with you, hear about what's been going on and just get you to perhaps reflect on that 10 years. And I suppose we should start with the fact that I think most of our listeners will know, or if not, they can catch up on the episode about you being a disgruntled, frustrated quantity surveyor, living kind of corporate life and deciding, right, I'm going to go and do my own thing, and found Conker.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I suppose I would therefore ask you, when you look back 10 years on, can you remember what some of those original emotions were like?
Yes, I've actually been doing a lot of that because of this 10th year, which is quite a milestone.
And it is quite. I remember 10 years for me was quite reflective, and I actually kind of ripped up the copybook a bit.
It is a bit because when you think of if I'd met myself back then, so someone 10 years in, a 10-year-old business is quite a mammoth business. Like it's like you think, wow, 10 years. Yeah. So to be in that, it's only when you sort of think through that kind of situation and actually realize we're 10 years in and that's quite something, and what a 10 years it's been, my God. It's all quite vivid actually. Like I can remember the feeling of that itch and that sort of restlessness in what I was doing, and that I think we've all been there at some point, and probably go through cycles of feeling that way before you resolve it, of just like, this isn't quite ticking the boxes. This isn't quite what I expected. I thought it'd be a bit different or more than this. And very much like with my first career, which was leaving university and going into like construction and surveying, very focused on achieving those qualifications and getting qualified. But then once that sort of milestone of getting qualified was done, it just seemed like a kind of long road to retirement sort of thing. So I think, clearly from taking on something like this, I need quite big, unobtainable goals. I don't know. Hang on, not unobtainable.
Big, hairy, audacious goals.
Something needs to I probably need that kind of like that sort of slightly.
That's kind of that trigger, that motivator. That thing.
Otherwise, I start maybe head turns and start thinking about other things.
And then, if you could go back 10 years, what advice?
I'd be a multi-millionaire of all the mistakes.
What advice would you give yourself?
Oh, okay. Advice. It would be tempting to say, Rupert, it's going to be really hard, Rupert. Are you sure? But I don't think I would, because I wouldn't want to put myself off. But the reality is, you're told, oh, it's tough, running your own business. Running your own business, but also like running like a consumer brand, I think is particularly challenging, I would say, because of that pressure to create a brand that is meaningful to other people, not just yourself, and then all the business function around that. I mean, that's unicorn stuff and really hard to pull off. I'm not saying that we do pull it off at all, and we're still learning how to do that. Yeah. So I'd be tempted to say, are you sure? but then I'd probably button it, because I wouldn't want to discourage it, because it is amazing and fantastic. But my word, it is a beast.
It's a roller coaster, isn't it? Success isn't linear, is it, in any way, shape or form?
Yeah. No. Do you know what I would also say, because those first, we caught a wave of an emerging category that had like inertia and there was space in it, like this gin thing. Like we caught that wave and we couldn't really put a foot wrong we'd done a great job sort of creating the brand and a delicious product. There was so much inertia in the appetite for craft gin. I probably would have tapped myself on the shoulder and gone, this won't last that long. You know, like I knew it wouldn't. I knew it would get busy and slow down, but maybe a few years prior to me realizing, I would have gone, actually, you know, build a sales team, get a strategy in place, all this sort of stuff. Because we found ourselves with huge popularity and huge demand. And we were sort of resting on our laurels a little bit around that kind of like thing. And then actually it's like, right, actually you've got to sell really hard. You've got to build a team. I was going to
say, do you wish you'd gone quicker, harder, faster?
That's always tempting as well. Yeah. But we were so stretched. I mean, when I think back now, it was, so I got it to the point where it was on the shelf selling before anyone else joined. Yeah. So that was me for a year.
Achievement.
Yeah, well, just running around like a madman for a year, just, you know, developing the brand and the liquid and getting premises and all the licenses and stuff. And then, you know, like 2 or 3 months after getting the license and selling bottles, my best mate, Fred, joined the team. Yeah. Ditched his job in the NHS. And so this has ruined 2 careers. So yeah, hopefully I didn't make that joke in the last podcast. Might have done. So we were just so busy with making enough gin for the demand we had that actually, you know, we delayed like looking at export. We delayed looking at certain things because, you know, sometimes you've got the capacity you've got, right? And that's as much as you can do.
And I do remember in our first conversation, you were very much proud and quite adamant that the fact that you'd bootstrapped the business rather than seeked investment. And now when you reflect at this perhaps reflective point, are you still happy that was the strategy you followed?
I think it was a needs must strategy, so we didn't have that finances. I suppose we could have gone and done big, deep fundraising stuff, but it always comes at a big cost in terms of control and who you're beholden to and on your board and what have you. So, we could have absolutely have raised, you know, £1 million in the first year and dug deeper into,
because it was that emerging, exciting market. Wasn't
absolutely, but it more likely than not, it would have changed not just the future of the company for the good, but also like my relationship with the company. So I'm actually pretty happy with where we are now in terms of while we've got shareholders as a result of fundraising, no one's calling the shots apart from me and from Fred.
I assume you're still majority shareholder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which puts us in a great spot now. Yeah. And also I'd add to that is that 10 years in, I finally learned how to run a business. Like you do not
teach me.
Yeah. So learned. That sounds like completed it. Done. No, not learned. I finally learned enough to run it day to day without making, you know, all the silly mistakes you make when you're young in business. And so I probably wouldn't have been a good idea to been handed £1 million check.
It's true though, isn't it? But you say silly mistakes, but in all of our businesses, sometimes those early mistakes are the ones that shape us. And sometimes we make mistakes because we're trying things that others haven't done before. Yeah. And some of those things work, don't they? So that little bit of early naivety in business, I think is a strength.
You've absolutely got to, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying anything new. That's very true. And we, as a brand, are all about pushing the boundaries and walking down the path that's less trodden. As a brand, but also me personally, like I don't want to do the product that someone else is doing down the road because it's not interesting. So the coffee, so we launched Dorset's first gin, and then we immediately launched the UK's first cold brew coffee liqueur. Yeah. We then launched the world's first decaf cold brew coffee liqueur. And these are all exciting spaces to be, right? Definitely that kind of risk-taking business is great. What I mean by like learning and mistakes is just probably the fundamental tools of business, like, you know, like managing your cash and building a team and putting strategy and all this sort of stuff. Because when you know, especially in the first 3 years when, you know, it's just all going so well because of the market's pushing you, you don't really need to think about those details because you're just like, oh, it's all good and groovy. But then actually suddenly you do. Suddenly it's like, oh.
And do you find, because a lot of that early success, and you talked about the products, a lot of that early success came from you having some headspace, didn't it? The first Dorset gin came because you were thinking, what could I do? What's next?
Yeah.
Looking for opportunity. Do you get, and I answer this because I would answer this, yes, I do get frustrated. Do you get frustrated that sometimes now you're caught up in running a business that you don't have the time to seek those opportunities?
So luckily I'm in it for the business. Like I'm in it for running the business. I'm not actually in it. I didn't start this with to wanting to be a gin distiller, and that was my passion. Yeah. And running the business has torn me away from the still. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm in it for, my passion is actually the creative business stuff.
Yeah.
So the frustration comes from being too close and being on the tools and not having the capacity to step away and run it, being too close. So we're quite a small team now. We're like 5 of us. And as a result, I am way too close to what we do around sales and marketing. I try and I bolt on all the kind of high level strategy thinking, pondering out the windows, and then all around the 12-hour day of just functional tasks.
Running a business.
Yeah. I think that's the key thing for me, would be to build the team by replacing me, all the things I do in sales and marketing, with people who are way better than me. And leaving me the time to actually run the team, set and set the expectation and stuff like that. That does excite me, that next phase. So
and do you see that as that holy grail is the next stage for you?
Yeah, definitely. Me stepping away from the cold face of, because it's hard work, right? It's really brutally hard work when I'm literally doing like 5 people's jobs. Yeah. Not very well, because it's, it's spread.
Well,
my time is spread. You just end up juggling
the balls, don't you? Keeping the plate spinning and all those old adages, but it becomes true, doesn't it?
Yeah. I just want to hire awesome people. Just be like, wow, you're incredible. Go do this. Do this on my behalf and build it with us. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. We're sat in front of your huge copper still. How big was the first one?
So the very first one was, I developed the recipe on a 1 litre pot still. It's that little guy on the shelf over there. You can't see it, the little tiny guy.
Yay. Wow.
So that is literally developed the recipe after work, came home from my surveying job and started to develop the Dorset dry recipe. So again, like completely started from scratch, had no idea, just took the view that anything can be learnt and it's not rocket science, and it really isn't rocket science. And then we went to our first production still. So the first still we were making gin that was like selling into Waitrose and the like was 30 litres. Okay. And that's those ones there behind the bar.
Okay. Yeah.
So still that kind of, for the listeners at home, this sort of big round copper. And then this is 500. So before this we were on stills that basically this will do in a day what they were doing in a week.
And how often do you run this still?
So around about weekly, I would say, depending on what we do, depending on time of year, sort of thing. Different products. We have a little cycle of different products and when they're needed. But it varies, to be honest.
And is that an exciting day in the distillery, or is it quite a stressful day?
No, not stressful at all. No, so so in terms of production, got 2 people here who essentially run all our manufacturing and distilling and brewing. It's Fred and Jess. Jess is our distillery manager. It's our time is split pretty evenly between our Dorset gin side of things and Conker coffee liqueur. Okay. So it either smells amazing of sort of mint and herbs and spices, or just like a massive big fresh coffee. Yeah. So it's pretty good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Sounds great. And when you were on the podcast, it was November 21. We'd just come out of the other side of COVID.
Right.
It had been a bit of a mixed bag.
Give me flashbacks now.
Don't.
Years of therapy just going down the drain now.
But, it had been a complete mixed bag in terms of increased demand for home delivery and all of that kind of thing. But clearly all the disruption when you're a manufacturing business that it brought to you. What's happened since, 3 years, nearly 3 years on? What's happened to the business in that time?
Yeah, COVID was mad. When it first was announced, and they were closing hospitality. That was half our business went through pubs and restaurants. So that was pretty shocking. It turned out we made, in 6 months, we made like 80,000 litres of hand sanitizer for like Dorset police and the care homes and local businesses. So it turns out we were really busy, and then our website went mad because everyone was drinking at home. Yeah. The key thing was it like 6 months later or something when lockdown was lifted? So that demand on the website really tanked.
Right.
And then 2022, it was that sort of cost of living, basically people just not having that confidence in spending. So we saw that in our supermarkets and just people not going out.
So as the home buying dropped, the supermarket and hospitality didn't kick back in the same way.
No. So the hospitality is a shadow of what it was, unfortunately, pre-COVID. And that's, not just from our business perspective, but I just remember going and meeting all the bartenders and the kind of appetite and excitement there was amongst bartenders and the culture in Bournemouth. And like there would be, bartenders from all over the world, like career bartenders who love making cocktails, and they've always either changed jobs and they're now plumbers, or they've gone back home onto the continent and changed their career direction. So it's a very different place. It's quite sad really, because as I say, it was quite buzzing. And I think actually COVID showed a lot of bartenders that there's an easier life out there from a 9 to 5, so you don't have to be up till 3 o'clock in the morning cleaning down and stuff like this. So as a business, we've had to work quite hard to like rebuild those relationships in the on trade. So, not only did we have a year and a half where we just couldn't go out and meet and do the same level of sort of events, but those people have gone.
Right.
And then we've just got, people just go out less. They either go out less to drink, or they drink less when they're eating. They have one glass rather than two. It's just been a very...
it just shook the whole market. And it's not
100%.
Really, from what you're saying, the market hasn't settled again?
No. I would say that it's... So last year it was basically big hotels keeping the heating on, and it costing them 2 or 3 times as much. Cost of goods, just generally like in the kitchens and all just the sheer expense of keeping a hospitality venue stocked and open, with fewer customers coming through the door and no staff. Yeah. You see it, right? Yeah. Who would own a hotel or a restaurant? What will solve that will be, I guess, just people having a bit of feeling like they've got a lot of money in their pocket. Because I think probably, in truth, a lot of our customers who are spending money on our sort of products probably aren't on the front line of poverty, but the perception of not going out and drinking. And the same for the customers in some of Bournemouth's top hotels. It's just that confidence to go out and have a drink and enjoy going out again.
And how have you dealt with that then? Have you just had to scale back some of the ambition? Have you scaled back the business? I mean, what coping mechanisms from a business perspective? Other than banging your head against a brick wall, have you introduced?
Well, luckily we're really well spread across like direct to consumer through our website and various sort of places like Amazon. We've got quite a good amount of retail split between independent wine shops and then like places like Waitrose and M&S and Tesco's, and then we've got our hospitality. So we're not sort of beholden to any one particular category, and so that really helped us through COVID. But we had to shrink back, so we're about half the size in terms of team since pre-COVID.
Okay, so that's where the pressures come with you juggling 5 roles.
100%.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. But we've also had to look at sort of other ways to get in front of our customers, and that's trade and the consumer. And we've done that through this space. So we've got this incredible old Victorian warehouse
beautiful
here.
Space to be filming in today.
Amazing. So a year and a half ago, we started, we've always done tours here, but we started doing our tap room. So essentially running a bar Friday and Saturday night from 4 till 10, where people can just come, people come with their kids from like 4 o'clock after school, and just the kids run around, and mum cherishes her G&T. It's just a great space for us to engage and like have that brand interaction with our customers, and everyone, we have people come in here and just drink beer, but that's great because they leave and they'll buy gin for someone at Christmas and that kind of thing.
They've got affinity for the brand, haven't they? Yeah.
Exactly. So we've evolved into, so our kind of like reason of being is kind of creating those sort of memorable experiences, the sort of personal experiences through the drinks we create. But now it's all about the events we put on as well. So it's about those, being the catalyst for those human moments.
Different income stream and something
new.
And
then of course that there was months over the last 2022, 23 where that was absolutely essential. Like just to pay the overheads.
To pay the bills.
Yeah. Before you can when things like the website dies down a bit, or suddenly you get and that's what we saw, like sort of quick changes in what we were expecting in terms of sales, which takes time for you to put right. So that provided a nice bit of consistency. Yeah.
And how do you personally, when it's your business and you see all of that going on, that's 2-3 years of quite a torrid time, find the belief and the resilience to keep going?
Good question. Pretty stubborn. I think there's a fundamental belief in what we do, and I think that that powers you through. But I would be lying if it wasn't moments throughout those last 3 years with COVID and the cost of living and the invasion of Ukraine, which just changed people's behaviours so much, where I didn't think, God, we've got to be really careful here. And that's quite a lot of pressure from a founder or an MD or anyone who's at the helm. Because you always feel like you're one wrong decision away from absolute catastrophe.
And the buck stops with you.
Sleep with that. So it's pretty intense. And I think it definitely tests your character. You've got to have a pretty good home life, because if you had, it's all very well having a business which is doing really well and then juggling your relationships and your children and stuff. But if your home isn't a happy place and your work isn't a happy place, that would be tough. Luckily, I've got the best home. So it's my island that I can, retreat.
Island of sanity.
I can retreat back to. And I've also Emily, who my wife, who she worked in the business, like from after having children, we've had 3 kids, and through that whole time, she worked in Conker through those maternity years, so for like 5 years or so, and became absolutely essential. She's an absolute powerhouse, and got it all sorted. But when COVID struck, she left the business to work at the local school. She went back to teaching, because we just thought we can't just having Conker pay the mortgage is stressful. So let's bring in another wage. So, and that's still the case now. So we're both full time. So it's a busy.
Which then means you're juggling everything again, aren't you?
It's again intense, but Emily's all in, in terms of Conker, and so when I need to pull the
name comes from her idea.
It does, yeah, exactly, yeah. She's got. So that's a big, being on the same page, united front, having a home life that can repair rather than continue to.
Means that you can be volatile in another part of your life and in another way.
I think so.
Because there's a constant and something secure foundation.
Yeah. I'm a big believer that a successful business is a complete magic trick, as a result of all these different components that need to be in. Magic's probably the wrong word, but it's an ecosystem of things that you can't run a business like this through absolute turmoil unless these other parts are in place.
I often think about it as, and you may as you grew up as kids, you had those little puzzles where you'd move the bits around to produce the picture. And it's a bit like that. There's so many moving parts, isn't it? Every now and again you see a glimpse of the picture, and ultimately that's where you're heading.
Exactly.
But sometimes it's just you look down and
all these little bits need to be in place. So So yeah, how did we do it? Yeah, I would say that's probably it really. Because if my home life had been tough, or I think it would have been tricky.
A very quick break from this week's episode, which I hope you're enjoying. If you are enjoying, please remember, do help us and help yourself to make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing and reviewing the episode. So that's it. Short interlude from me. Let's get back to the conversation. How do you balance? Because one of the things I really admire, Rupert, about Conker is the brand and how you've created the brand, but how you've nurtured it, from being originally seen as a gin brand to then being seen as a spirit brand. Now we're looking at, a spirit experience distillery kind of brand. And you've taken the brand on that journey stage by stage. How have you gone about doing that?
I would say,
is it conscious?
Well, I would say that I haven't taken it, it's taken me. Okay. So I would say that when you've got a business that works and is operating and kind of has a life of its own, the market will tell you which bits are successful and which bits aren't, right?
Yeah,
so
dictates
you
itself.
Don't, was it quality? Like the market doesn't reward the best.
Yeah.
So I love that because it's like, it's about, it's sometimes completely irrational what works, what doesn't. Making the best coffee liqueur or the best gin in the world doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't mean that it's going to be the best.
No.
So
so many people spend so much time trying to make the best rather than just
and they'll write it on.
market.
It'll be their their sole strategy to be the best. It's like that's everyone's strategy, right? So so in terms of like the evolution, it's a kind of like tail wagging the dog navigation of like what works, what do people resonate with. So we were always Conker Spirit because I knew that I didn't want to be Conker Gin.
Yeah.
So that was me. I claim that bit. So because I didn't want it to be just a gin brand because I knew gin would fizzle out.
Yeah.
And then we sort of moved to Conker Distillery. And the reason why Conker Distillery, so moving from the word spirit under the name Conker to Distillery, literally on our bottles, was because what we're sitting in here is probably our biggest USP. Like you wouldn't, it sounds a bit obvious, right? We're a gin distillery, therefore we've got a distillery. Whereas actually a huge number of our competitors, I suppose, a huge proportion of them are made by other people. Yeah. So they're essentially like white label brands. The ones that do make it themselves, a vast majority of them will make it on a very small scale, in the garage or in a tiny little lockup, like we did before. Yeah. I didn't want to show people our lockup the first couple of years; it was a bit embarrassing. And then very few will have this sort of setup where people can come and see, and there's big tall stills and sort of things. So moving to distillery was a very deliberate move to be like, we are the real deal.
Yeah.
And like one of our key values is genuine craft.
Yeah.
And that's a real we are what we say, we do what we do kind of thing, rather than we're not one of these brands where if you keep digging, you'll just find nothing or a kind of, it being made by someone else. So we sort of say, the more questions people ask about Conker, just the better it gets because it's all real. And then the evolution of the brand to the coffee is just our kind of love for that category and shaking up that category to remove that sort of outdated sort of coffee liqueur to what we're doing now, which is really exciting.
And do you think, because obviously the kind of gin movement is still going strong, but it's sort of, it's probably, I don't know, my assumption as a consumer is that it's kind of, it started to taper and it's probably tapering off slightly and some of the brands you used to see are now disappearing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Do you think one of the strengths in you getting into some of the supermarkets is, that you are making it yourself, you're not white labeling? Or do you get frustrated that perhaps the easier way to have done it would have been that white label? And
no, definitely not. No, there's definite smugness from doing it the hard way. And no.
I thought I'd ask.
No, I'd be terrified. I'd be terrified if it was just if we were just a bottle.
Yeah,
because that's
just a brand.
Exactly. Because people work with people and buy into what people do, and if you're speaking to the Waitrose buyer or something. It's a conversation about what you do and your place, and
the buyers really buy into that.
that's the only reason they do it.
Yeah,
Because they spend the rest of their time head deep in spreadsheets, so they want to meet founders and producers, and they
people.
want to go on trips to see distilleries. That's why they're spirits buyers. So yeah, 100%. And a lot of we did this by literally. I mean, it took us 10 years to get to a point where I looked around and thought, yeah, this is a distillery. Yeah. Whereas there's lots of brands that literally, they start and they're a distillery right off the bat, and they've got, I don't know, they're 2 million in or something, which is great, but we had to do it slowly. And
we talked about that earlier. That wasn't going to be your journey, and not the journey you would have wanted.
It was just a kind of reinvesting slowly, basically. Yeah.
And while we're on that subject of brand, I want to come on and talk about your values in a minute. But when we on that subject of brand, how do you? Because you're building a local brand, aren't you? With the distillery and some of the experiences, and I'm sure people will travel and come and it's for the tours and that kind of thing. But while you're building a local brand, you're building this grand national brand that others will buy into the supermarkets and bars all around the country. How do you go about that? Is there a difference in the approach you need to take in building that local brand versus national? And does that cause any conflict ever?
There's two strategies to Conker. One is Dorset gin, and we call it painting Dorset yellow.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's simply owning Dorset, owning our hometown in gin.
Yeah.
Because gin is super regional, and it's all about the locality of where it's made, and the brand is the coast, botanics, craft. The national piece is coffee. So that's why we rebranded our coffee liqueur 2 or 3 years ago. And because the coffee conversation, our Conker Coffee Liqueur is about bringing barista quality, barista experience to the cocktail. It's not Dorset roasted coffee, handcrafted in copper stills in Bournemouth. It's nothing to do with Dorset, Bournemouth. It is once you look, they make it themselves, but the pitch and the value to you is espresso martinis without the coffee machine.
Yeah.
It's specialty grade ethical coffees for your liqueur.
So there is two different strategies purposefully.
Yeah, there's two very different, because and that's, so you see brands like ours, or producers like ours, like a distillery, and we make all of these things. We make gin, we make coffee liqueur, we do rum, Whereas we're not a gin distillery with a coffee liqueur in our portfolio.
Yeah,
we're a distillery with a coffee liqueur brand.
Okay,
which is really different.
Yeah,
and it's like it takes you a while to.
The penny starts to
drop. Well, I mean, for me, like when we did it initially, we were a gin, because our gin, it did look like our gin, and people call it the coffee gin, and so suddenly you realise, hang on a minute, we're doing a huge disservice by clumping it with the gin and talking about Dorset. So and then but for the national picture for the gin, I think you've just got to, it's all about Dorset. As soon as we start talking about a gin, a national gin, it loses its appeal for anyone outside of the county buying into Dorset. So it's just all about owning that and being proud of that. And as soon as you start to dilute that, you're actually diluting your core being for the gin, I suppose.
And natural question, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. New product development on the horizon, anything, or are you?
Everyone loves that question.
You got that kind of two-pronged strategy. Mm-hmm. It's working for you, gaining momentum again.
Yeah.
Is it eyes on the prize, or is there still other things?
It's very much eyes on the prize. So it's so tempting to bring out new products because that's the question you get asked a lot, and you're kind of they obviously, when you bring out something new, it brings in new sales. So you think, that's the way you gather. Yeah. You make money for the businesses by creating things new, whereas actually there's so much untapped opportunity, and also lost opportunity through COVID as well. So like we've lost ground for our gin through COVID in hospitality. So there's so much to be gained back just by focusing on what we currently do. But no, so the coffee liqueur is our main focus. That's where it's not a Dorset conversation, it's a national conversation. So that's where we're having national conversations with buyers in the supermarkets about getting, sort of 200, 250 store listings across the UK and international as well. So a lot of effort in there. But the Dorset gin piece is at the same time, is really important. So we're just about to, in fact, by the time this goes live, we would have launched a raspberry gin. So it's something we haven't done, mostly because of this coffee liqueur thing we've been looking at. But we're going to start sort of like build up the Dorset gin offering to offer, have something for everyone. But we're kind of in sort of true Conker, we're sort of doing it really well and really properly from raspberries rather than
flavouring.
Yeah, because
I remember having a conversation with you once before about flavourings and gins.
It's you've got to stick to your guns, and your principles and stuff. So we're just be bottling it this week, and it's literally our Dorset dry gin with steeped in loads of British raspberries, and it's amazing. And it's not big, it's not clever, but it's delicious.
I can't wait to try it.
We'll be thickening out the Dorset dry range with some what we think's missing, and that was really missing because we have our Dorset dry, which is sort of proper gin and tonics, classic sort of everyday gin, and then we've got some sort of delicious, but quite niche sort of like we've got a Navy strength and a port barrel gin. They're amazing and proper grown-up gins, and there's just this gap in the middle between.
I love your Navy strength gin.
The Navy is.
And you're still raising money for the RNLI through that?
We're not actually. So that was a 3-year thing. So that was a 3-year thing. But we over the 3 years we raised 55,000 for them.
Fantastic! Congratulations! Cool. That's awesome.
The gin lives on though, which is great. So you can still drink a Navy G&T.
Enjoy the gin.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about your values here. So I'm going to have to look down and refer to these. So your core values, principles are positive impact and integrity. Mm-hmm. Total quality. I could have put you on the spot and got you to answer.
They've actually changed.
Right. Okay.
They've evolved.
Genuine craft, community spirit, independent and family owned, and perpetually learning. Now, one of the things I think got right at Inspire when it was working was that we had those core principles and value sets, which you clearly have, even if they might have changed a little bit. Maybe we'll touch on that in a moment. But it was great, and I used to say we need to inspire on a good day every day. So we're really living those principles and values. That's us at our best.
Yeah.
But you have bad days, bad weeks, bad months, and it ebbs and it flows. So how do you keep the business true to those values day in, day out?
It's a good question. Luckily, we've got a small team, so it's quite easy to communicate and get consistency across everything we do. I think, truth be told, when we grow, we'll need to put a lot more sort of assets and sort of in place to make sure that those values go all the way through. Yeah, because that's the trouble, isn't it? When you've got a team of 40, you can't you lose that control unless it's in the DNA of the business. But like a really really great values mean that you only hire people who buy into those, right? So as a tool for building a team that all are on the same wavelength, you start before you have the team of 40. You build up the team of 40 with this blueprint, right? That people go, I want to work for Conker because because of that, because I believe in that,
and I can see they behave.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd say how have we done it? I think it's just it's probably been easier because those values so deeply ring true with me that I'm not having to go, what are our values again?
It's interesting because I did read through them, and I'm thinking, I know you're a little, Rupert. I don't know you really well, but I know you're a little, and I'm thinking, well, that's Rupert.
Oh, that's Rupert. Really cool. That's
I can
cool.
see that in Rupert, like perpetually learning that one. And I talk about always wanting to have a growth mindset, and any business I'm involved in, I want the people to have that thing, but perpetually learning, that's a way in which I would describe your kind of openness to thinking.
Yeah. Well, that sums up Conker, right? Because when I bought that little still, I had no idea what I was doing. So it's perpetually learning, because you're learning on the job, right? And we still are, and the products we make, even with the raspberry gin, that is not innovation. Outside of these four walls, it's not innovation, but within it is, because we're doing it from scratch, and we're like, right, let's first principles. How do we make this delicious? And it isn't complicated. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But we are starting from a place of like not knowing and actually going, right, how do we make this amazing without using flavorings and colorings? So even with something as simple as making a raspberry gin, those values apply.
Yep, definitely.
Which is quite cool.
Brilliant. And you've got a stated aim by 2030 of being a positive contributor from a sustainability and carbon kind of place. How are you going about, because that's something that should and does interest many business owners. How are you going on that journey? So,
as with any manufacturer, it's pretty much all about your supply chain. So it's about sourcing gradually, because this is a slow process. It definitely can't happen overnight, especially when because it's very resource heavy as well in terms of like being able to afford things like alternatives to glass bottles. But it's about looking at your supply chain and then downstream how your products are consumed. So at the moment, just because of resource, we're doing stuff which is quite affordable to implement, but actually it has quite significant impacts. Things like we do a trade sort of 5 and 10 litre bag and box now, where the trade can refill bottles, which, again, that's not innovation, right? We've had wine and stuff and spirits in bags for a long time, but it is mad that we all buy spirits in glass and it gets imported from whichever country it's made in, and which is really heavy glass, and then it's used for in a busy bar, it's used for about 20 minutes and then thrown in the bin. So moving towards refills, moving away from glass is something we're looking at. So, the industry and the technology isn't there, but like aluminium bottles is where I want it all to be. It's not there.
But that's a change in technology.
It's not there.
People's perceptions as well, isn't it?
Yeah. At the moment, it's like 3 times the cost of a glass bottle, and it's just not practical. And then, of course, there's all these things you can do around just offsetting. So we use 100% sustainable energy here for gas and electric. But we want to do more around something since moving away from the RNLI, which was our major sort of charity. We want to find, I'm not quite sure what it is, but find that contribution, that per bottle contribution to a sustainable. So yeah, exactly. There's a few things in the runnings now.
Okay.
So it's things like that, really. And then also sustainability boils down to actually having a functioning business that can pay good wages and contribute to the community.
And have you ever looked at the B Corp kind of thing? And is it something that you're looking into, or have you ruled it out? Always interested to see where business owners that are so kind of passionate about sustainability and all of those things, do they pursue that or not? And there's not a right or wrong answer, is there?
No, we've pursued it. We've done everything. I think it's with them at the moment in terms of like, you do your initial stuff.
This is a watch this space.
It is, yeah. And we'll no doubt get it. I am, the jury's out a bit on that as well, I think, around what it actually means to the consumer now, given that you do see it a lot. So I think it's important. I think it's a great initiative for a business to say, we're doing the right stuff,
things in the right way.
But yes, I think there'll be other things coming through, I'd imagine, that probably better represent true sustainable practice in businesses, I'd say. But we are progressing that for sure.
And we started the conversation with the reflection that it's, been a 10-year journey to get to this point and all of those things. So what's your proudest moment in those 10 years?
I'm not very good at this. I'm not.
Can I make you reflect in that?
People always say to me, "You must be so proud." I'm like, yeah. Because you're so in it, aren't you?
There must have been a pinch me moment, or a moment when you think when you're
Yeah.
going to talk to your grandchildren about what you did and
Yeah,
those
yeah.
early days of Conker Distillery.
Yeah.
What's that moment?
That's a good question. I think nothing fills me more with pride when I come in here on a Friday or Saturday night and it's absolutely full and everyone's absolutely having a great time and they're buying bottles after a tour and stuff. So I generally think like it's such a hard question for me to answer, and you might relate to this because when you're in it, you just don't see it. You're not standing up away from it enough to go, this is brilliant. But so it is quite hard to answer. But I do find the most rewarding things is when you speak to someone. So you saying that about the values, that's brilliant because that just means like we're getting it right?
Yeah,
and
the sort of things that give you joy.
If the last 10 years is going to be is anything, if it's me being true to myself, then brilliant,
that's
right?
life, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's brilliant, isn't it? Because it's certainly not. Business will do this. Riches to poverty, all in the cycle of a few years. But if you're doing what you want to do, and you're true to your word, then that's something to be proud of, I reckon.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And I would have asked you this before, but I will wrap up with the conversation around success.
Yeah.
And I think we've touched on it for you. But so, given what you've been through, some of those darker moments, possibly in the last few years, that whole 10-year journey.
Yeah.
What is your definition of personal success, Rupert?
I think it boils down to family, because I've met so many people who are like maybe 10 to 15 years down the line and they go, oh yeah, well I was very successful. I sold for this, whatever. And then they go, well, I'm on my third wife or
my kids don't speak to me.
Yeah. And that it's a cliche, but it's you'd be surprised how many times you see it. And it literally wouldn't be worth it. It would just be black and white, not worth it if it destroyed what life is actually all about.
Yeah.
Which is actually just,
And for you, the business aids family, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It does. And I was speaking to someone after a tour, and they were going, oh, you must be really proud. And I was like, oh. But it was about that work-life thing. And I probably mentioned this because I'm a big believer of this. It's like that work-life balance thing. When you're in a 9-to-5 that is hard and your life is bipolar between your work and your home life. I used to remember becoming like a different person and having to sort of really be like, right, be surveyor, Rupert, go. But Conker is our life. It is one and the same. And that makes life so much easier. It's quite stressful having that division. So although Conker's brutally hard and crazy hours, it's like lifeblood. It's like it's the now and also what we're doing and where is it going to be, and it's exciting.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So.
Watch this space.
Yeah, exactly.
And if people do want to watch this space or buy some product and find out more about you, where can they go, Rupert?
Well, you can come down and see us. So in Bournemouth, in a little town called Southbourne, come and see us on a Friday and Saturday for our tap rooms. Just turn up 4 till 10. But yeah, obviously head to our website, conkerspirit.co.uk, and book onto a tour, buy a bottle, all that.
Support.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you once again.
Pleasure.
For being a great guest on the podcast and for sharing so candidly some of the challenges, but also some of the opportunities that you're facing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rupert.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. I really hope you've enjoyed that episode with Rupert. What a great conversation. There's so much there that we can learn from Rupert and his 10 years in business. It reminded me in so many ways of things and events that happened on my own journey, being drawn back into the business and not being able to put my head above the parapet at times. The importance of those values, which was a great piece of the conversation with Rupert, and the fact that those values have to align with you and have to be true with you. So much more as well. I really hope you've enjoyed the episode. If so, please do subscribe and review the podcast on your favorite platform. That will really help us. And of course, we'd love to have a conversation with you at Evolve about how we can help you and your business to start, grow and exit. So please do also go to evolveadvisory.co.uk. Thank you.